This Beatles book. See, it's a Beatles book. Here. Beatles, the Illustrated Record. By Boy Carr, Tony Tyler. Yeah, no, it's Wolsey. It's really nice. Beatles and Illustrated Record. This one is copyright 1973. That's that one. Okay, fine. There's the writers. The intro, the early years, Beatlemania studio years, the George outro, really bootlegs, and the other things. It's a nice book. It has the Beatles every year from the beginning. It kind of got beat up. It's just an old book. There's the early years. 1963. The Beatles. It's falling apart. Sorry, guys. I'll put it back together. The Beatles. And there's some pictures. It shows every time they recorded what they were, who produced it, and what was on it, and then what was the B-side. So they did a lot of release on the Signals in 63. And then there's the full album. So with the Beatles, all the records, and then the cover with the Beatles on it. And then it has some memorabilia like this ad with George, and then this button, and a fun magazine thing with the different Beatles, John, Paul, George, and Ringo. Some pictures of them performing. Here's some more pictures of them from 1964, when they won the Ed Sullivan Show. And there's the thing when they went to Carnegie Hall. Then they did, in 64, A Hard Day's Night. We're looking at the Beatles. The Beatles, Hard Day's Night. There's another poster. There's a scene from it. There's their thing from when they were touring. There's Beatles for Sale. And they said they looked a little tired because they were touring. Busy. Then in 1965, Ringo got married to Maureen Cox. And then 1965, they did Help. Hello, we're doing the Beatles in 1965. Hi, this is the Beatles. We're looking through a Beatles book. This is what it is. It's a little old, but it's still in good condition. This is my book. I've had this book before. I've had it since the 70s. But this one, I got it a little while ago. So we're now looking at Help. So this is pictures from Help. It shows you what they look like. These are from the movie. And there's a scene from Help. If you remember the movie, it's a nice one. And then there's some of pictures. And so it just goes month by month, album by album. And it shows you what was on the thing. Hi. And then there's the book of the album. And then here's some stuff when they went to Shea Stadium, which was a big concert. And they are getting ready. And there's some photos from Shea Stadium. And that's when they were meeting with them, when they're heavy into touring. And so this book just goes day by day and year by year. And it shows you this is when they did Rubber Soul. Hi, Rubber Soul. So it gives you the Parlophone release number, who produced it, all the tracks, and who sings on them. So you can take this book and get the record, and then you can listen to it. The record and read the book. 1965. Oh, I'm holding it wrong. There's Beatles Fan Club. And remember, they did Christmas records for every year. It's really fun to listen to. There's Paul and them. And there's some from 66. And so they started off Yesterday, Paperback Writer, Nowhere Man. There's some films from them performing. There's John and Ringo, and George and Paul. Then there's Revolver. With that nice Klaus Forman cover. That's both photos and drawings. And this is the track listing for Revolver. And Beatlemania was really crazy. And then John got into a movie. This is a scene from the movie. He was in How I Won the War. Then they released some more singles of them, including the Submarine, and Eleanor Rigby. And they did the Beatles Oldies album, which is Oldies but Goldies, which is their old stuff. And then they worked on Sgt. Pepper's. So there's Ringo and John and Paul and George in 1967. And this shows them working in the studio. So Paul's playing the organ, Ringo's playing the drums, and George is playing the guitar. And there's John and Ringo and George Martin. And there they are with the strings, because it does have strings on it. Number of the song. Here's the full track list for Sgt. Pepper's. It shows you who sings on everyone. And it gives a little review of every article. There's a great front picture with the famous picture everybody always copies of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band. See? It's quite a thing. If you have a copy, you should take a look at it, because it's got a lot of amazing people in it. And they set it up, and they took the Beatles picture in front of it. Then they went to India. There's George, and there's John in India, and the Maharishi, and there they all are. And that's when they did their concert on All You Need Is Love. And there's what John looked like when he was with the Maharishi in 1967. And then they are recording some stuff for Magical Mystery Tour. And they're both playing trumpet. I think that's in something. That might be in Only Another Song. Or Only Another Song, where you hear some weird trumpets. I think that's them playing the trumpet. There's George Ravi Shankar. And then there's the cover of the Magical Mystery Tour. And then they got some scenes from it. So that's from All You Need Is Love. And then that's from the Magical Mystery Tour. And that's when they do another number from it. And that's them in Magical Mystery Tour. And that's when they went to India again. And that's in 68. So now they're into the Beatles out, the White Album. Then they are playing Revolution with David Frost. And then George releases Wonderwall. And then here's the Beatles with Yellow Submarine. And then there's the cover of the Beatles album from 63. I'm having some trouble holding that thing. Okay. That's, if you have the Beatles White Album, this comes as a poster from the four Beatles. Then in 1969, they started to work on stuff for singles, and they started working on stuff for Let It Be and Abbey Road. Now, Abbey Road was released first, and there's the whole full track length. There they are in some of the photographs for Abbey Road. The famous one, George, Paul, Ringo, and John. I tried to find Abbey Road in the 2000s. There they are playing one of their last, I think it was Revolution, they were doing live. Then they started doing slow stuff, like Ringo Starr's Sentimental Journey. There's John, when he chopped his hair off, doing Instant Karma. Then they put out McCartney. This was the madness. McCartney came out right around the same time that Let It Be came out. Yeah, that one came out in April, and Let It Be came out in May. There's the cover of Let It Be. And then there's some of the recording. If you watch the movies, you'll see them. There they are at the rooftop concert. And they are in the studio. And then it goes in the solo years. So you get Ringo and the great All Things Must Pass, Plastic Ono Band, John. Then you get John and Yoko, and you get lots of movies from Ringo. Ringo was in a bunch of great movies. He was in 2000 Motels, Son of Dracula, all kinds of stuff. And some of the, he was in Born to Boogie. He was in a lot of stuff in 71. There's Ram. There's one image of John. And that's Imagine. And there's the concert for Bangladesh with George and Bob Dylan. And that's Wings. And there's Ringo and Mark Bolan. We're friends. There's John playing with his band. There's George in concert and Paul. This is really updated look for Paul with his muscle shirt, and they're in their clothes. And then there they are with the Plastic Ono Band from sometime in New York City, which they did a big concert, which is really good. So it's 73. And this is when Ringo does another movie. I think it was a movie where he played a teddy boy. He was really good at movies. There's Paul and Red Rose Speedway. There's Ringo in the studio, and George. And George's album, Living in the Material World. Then that James Paul McCartney TV special, which is great. And you should give it a watch. It looks very good music and a very good look into his life. And here's John again and Ringo, another album. And then Band on the Run. And then Walls and Bridges. And then Goodnight Vienna, which was a great song from Ringo. And then George's album. And then some stuff with the touring. When they did the Sgt. Pepper's show, which was a Broadway production. And this is when John plays with Elton John live. And then this is the end of the book, because it was ended in 74. So all the Beatles were still alive. So there's a lot in this. This is what they're doing. So this is what they were doing at the end of the book. That's what Paul and Linda looked like. That's what George looked like. That's what Ringo looked like. And John was still alive. So they were wondering, what were they doing? And John was living in New York. And then they did a bunch of American releases. And then here's the index. And here's some bootlegs and some cartoons and some odds and ends. So when they did records, like they did the Family Way soundtrack and other things they were on, and some other recordings and songs they wrote for these guys. Yeah, see, it even lists stuff that they wrote for other art writers like Harry Nilsson, Jackie Lomax, Sarah McSee, Doris Troy, and other ones. And this is where you can make your notes about the Beatles. So things you remember. So that's it. And there's the end. It's called The Beatles Illustrated Record. The Beatles Illustrated Record. By Roy Carr and Tony Tyler. It's been updated. The latest edition is all the way at 1981, which is when I got it the first time. And you think you can get it used for not very expensive. It's a lovely book. See, it's about this big, so it's a pretty big book. And the pictures are really good. Okay, thanks. Hope you enjoyed the book. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.